Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And people on the line with us today, we have Robert A. Little. And we're going to be discussing his amazing book, Weeping, the Soul of a Christian Nation. It's available for purchase through Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, pretty much wherever books are sold. Head on over there today and pick up your copies. And before we go any further, I want to take an opportunity and point out that Robert was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by one of the best publishing companies in the business, Author Reputation Press. So people, listen, if you're a writer out there and you have a book that you need help moving, I'm going to offer you some fantastic advice. Contact ARP. They're one of the best in the business to do it. They specialize in taking your literary creation to the next level. Head on over to authorreputationpress.com today and gather all of the ways that they can help you. And listen, it is an absolute pleasure, a true delight to have Robert here on the line. Now, the moment you head on over to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, you start to do any research on his book, Weeping, you're going to understand the discussion we're getting ready to have. Now, listen, I'm here for it, okay? As I mentioned a number of times on previous shows, I was not someone raised in the church. I've never considered myself a very religious person, although I do consider myself spiritual. Now, I'm not going to go into all of the reasons why. It's not pertinent to today's interview, but when it comes to the subject matter that we're going to be discussing today, this is something that I have often felt and often thought about when it comes to organized religion. Now, Weeping is an educational narrative. And one of the underlying messages, one of the underlying themes, amongst a plethora of others, is it's meant and designed to help Christians reevaluate their core values. And when I say core values, one that just instantly pops off the top of my head is love thy neighbor. Now, I know it's a very popular topic, and I know it's one that Robert discusses in his book. And I've often grappled with this notion. Because, again, being someone that wasn't raised in the church, but I've had my interests and my curiosity, so I've dabbled here and there, and I have a lot of people in my inner circle that are very religious. And I often have had conversations with them with that notion, love thy neighbor, and treat others the way you want to be treated. That was one of the things that I was taught in school growing up, and it almost seems like something that isn't really discussed anymore. Because when you look around the current state of our country and our society at large, it seems to be something that has been forgotten. When we talk about just America in general, and I know I'm going to go down a rabbit hole here, and I may go a little too far and I may have to get pulled back, but when it comes to the immigration policy, for instance, and again, I'm not going to get political here, but I remember growing up in this country, being in school and being taught that America was a melting pot, that America was this hodgepodge of collections of different cultures, different people, and different immigrants that all migrated here to this great country of ours. And somewhere along the way, it became a thing where it was once celebrated and cherished. And then it just got to the point where things got a little muddy, and now it's like, yeah, let's not allow people here, right? Let's try to close our doors to people that don't look like us, that don't sound like us, that don't come from a similar background. And again, I'm reaching here. I understand that that rabbit hole goes deep, and there is a very, very long conversation that we can go into. So it's not as black and white as I'm making it right now. But for the sake of this interview, this is something that really stood out to me when I was researching and prepping for today's interview. And I'm so glad that we have Robert here on the line because, as I mentioned, love thy neighbor is one notion that I know is discussed in the book, but it is one that I think is often forgot about when it comes to Christians. And again, from the Jesus that I know, it's all about loving, and it's all about accepting those around you, regardless of backgrounds or economic situations. And it doesn't always seem to be the case. Now, I'm looking forward to this. Robert is the expert, okay? He's going to be able to articulate his perspective on this topic much better than I ever could. He's written the book. He's done the research. And I want you to take his word for it because, like I said, he's the expert when it comes to this subject matter. So without further ado, let's bring him here with us. Robert, first and foremost, man, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest. How you doing today?
I'm doing well, Benji. Very good. And I have to thank you for your words. You said a mouthful. You said everything that I was thinking and a lot to deal with the book, and I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, man, I'm gonna cut to the chase and say you started it, okay? Because you wrote this book and you laid down such a fantastic foundation that it was easy for me to follow that roadmap that you had established. And Robert, listen, I mean what I said, okay? I really do. I meant that. I think we're at a dangerous point now, and I don't know if it's. I'll be honest, like I don't know if it's a thing where it just seems like we're at a more dangerous point now than we were when I was growing up, or maybe it's just because as I get older, I'm just paying more attention. And maybe this has always been here, but it definitely seems like something has shifted, at least for me. And I love the fact that we have you here on the network to discuss it because I think what you're doing is profound. And at the very least, if it gets people to initiate conversations, my goodness, man, just through those conversations and raising of the awareness, we can move mountains. And I'm looking forward to this discussion. So thank you again for being a guest. Before we go into the book and the words that are on those pages, Robert, tell us a little bit more about your background, please.
My background, born and raised in New York. Professionally, I'm a cybersecurity expert. Mm-hmm. You could say part-time. I work with children, inner cities, starting educational programs and things of that nature, and was actually fortunate enough because of my work in the community. I was a United Way hero, got to carry the Olympic torch in the 1996 Olympics.
Wow.
And received a letter of recommendation from President Obama. And that's aside, because, every day to pay the bills, I'm a cybersecurity professional.
Right. Can't forget about adulting, right? That's a different matter entirely. Yeah. Robert, that's impressive, man. People, I'm telling you, could we have selected a more perfect embodiment of a person of distinction? Wow. Listen, it's not every day we get to talk to someone that held the torch at an Olympic Games and also has a letter of recommendation and an acquaintance with the previous President Obama. That is quite the accomplishment, man. Thank you again. This is fantastic. What a way to begin an interview. Robert, without further ado, let's jump right in, man. Weeping, the Soul of a Christian Nation. Tell us a little bit more about those pages.
It follows the inception of religion, but actually starting with, as you mentioned, spirituality. Mm-hmm. It starts with the biblical principles and the inception of Christian principles. I began with the Old Testament for the early biblical, moved to the New Testament for Christianity, and then each chapter discusses the next period in history, like after the crucifixion, how America was founded, came to be who she is today, and current day policies. And what I try to do is relate those, what we do today, those principles, the laws, our level of morality and how we take care of each other, how we take care of the elderly, the mentally ill. And I tie it to what Jesus said, what Peter said, what Paul said, what was said in the Old Testament, and follow it, because when I originally wrote the book, it was more emotional, meaning it was my viewpoint. Yeah. And I said, you know what, let me tie it to the Bible. Let me tie it to America, that's supposed to be the greatest Christian nation. So that was the approach I took. And I discuss how those principles were distorted through time, how they've been misunderstood, how they even have been discarded or ignored. Things like equality, human rights. And that means equal rights in humanity throughout history. Every generation, it seems that we get a little better. But my take was that those things did not get addressed throughout history because we were Christian. Mm-hmm. Those things got addressed as a result of war, protest, and legislation. So I try to bring it all together, like you said, educate people on the history of the United States, on the Bible. When I talk about the Old Testament, it's not just a paragraph. I speak about every book. In the New Testament, I speak about every book. After the crucifixion, I talk about what happened with the disciples and Peter and Paul and everything, all the way through Constantine and the Roman Empire and how Christianity was changed. And just want the reader to get a full objective view of everything that's happening in our history.
Love that. Love that. People, listen, you know that the information found in this book is coming from a knowledgeable place. It is not just taken from one person's perspective or point of view. He's backing it with so much information that is found in the Bible and utilizing a lot of the research to back his points. I'm loving this. You know, Robert, I want to go into inspiration. I know you've started to go into it a little bit, but I want to go a little further in depth. What inspired? Because listen, this book could have been something, or the information found in the book could have been something that you gathered and kept on a personal shelf, or gathered and told those around you verbally. But you took it a step further. You put the book out for the public. What inspired you to do that?
It's something that you mentioned. I had a sort of a religious background, went to a Baptist church. I was confirmation in a Lutheran church. I believe around 9, 10 years old, I became an acolyte. An acolyte is like an altar boy. You wore the robe, the tassel, you gave out communion, you cleaned the tassels, you did all those sort of things. And I studied it and had a lot of questions. And a lot of my questions weren't answered. It was more, this is the guideline, this is the table of contents, so to speak, of what you are going to learn. And when I went to Methodist, I studied religion as an elective when I was in college. I studied a lot of other religions. I knew someone who could speak Hebrew, and he set me down to translate certain things and show me how it changed throughout time. And I was a very strong reader and proponent of historical knowledge. Growing up, I didn't really read. I have an older sister. She read things like Nancy Drew, and all those little books. The books that most children read.
Yeah.
I read our encyclopedias and our historical books, our medical books. I always liked that, and I excelled in school because I read those things. But I always thirst for knowledge and always went further, always asked the pastor, always asked the teacher of the hard question. Well, if you said this, then that must be true, or that's not true, or something else. And getting back to what you said, what I realized, people got upset at me because I went to it's called a Word of Faith, evangelical church for a few years, taught there, taught in the community, things of that nature. And I would tell people, I'm not religious. And they're like, what do you mean you're not religious? I said, I'm spiritual. I don't believe in the politics of spirituality. Mm-hmm. To me, religion, the different denominations has kind of become partisan, like the right wing, the left wing, Republicans, Democrats. And their takes on the Bible is very subjective. People form a certain viewpoint, ideology. They raise their children. They either will help the homeless or step over the homeless. And it doesn't matter. They still say that they're religious.
Right.
And seeing certain things on the news, I was wondering, like you said, why are we going down this rabbit hole? And I started thinking, well, if America is a Christian nation, supposed to be the greatest Christian nation, why do we have one of the highest level of poverty and worse health care and highest counts for gun violence and certain things, if we are Christian? But I would think that a Christian nation would be void of those things. We would be a shining example to the world. I've traveled to other countries, and to be honest with you, people in other countries said that your biggest problem is going to be that you're from the United States. I said, excuse me? Yeah, the United States isn't viewed as they think they are. So that brought me down the path of, okay, what is the key problem? What is it that we need to do? Okay, we're a Christian nation. Let's go back and see, are the people of the country Christian, or is the country as a whole Christian? Because I think there are good Christians, and they should not be blamed for the conduct of the country, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's how
Robert,
that's how the world views us.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right. Listen, man, I'm picking up what you're putting down. Okay. I understand it. And this, I'm telling you, people, this is why you have to get your hands on this book. Because listen, at the end of the day, all he's doing is posing questions, right? He's initiating a conversation that I, for one, feel is more than appropriate. I think is more than valid. Because when you look at a lot of the things happening here in our country, again, I think it's worth stopping and asking, is this true to Christian values? And listen, you might be surprised by the answer you come up with. If you're really honest with yourself, right? I mean, if you really look at it, you examine it, and if you're really honest, I don't know, man. Something seems a little backwards, and I'm telling you, this is much larger than a literary creation. Of course, that it is, right? The words are on the page. It is absolutely a literary creation, but this is a movement, people. This is a lifestyle change. And Amazon and Barnes & Noble are where you have to go to pick it up. As we start to close out of this fantastic interview here, Robert, because listen, I already know myself, knowing the subject matter, knowing the context. I can sit here, I can talk to you for hours, man. There's that much to go into, and I'm that much enthralled and engulfed in the conversation. But I have to remind myself, Benji, this is not about you. Let's keep it honed in here. So as we start to close out, last couple of questions, curiosity from myself with this next one, but what would you say was a highlight for you in writing the book? Or if not a highlight, maybe that's the wrong connotation to put on it. What would you say was something that surprised you that you weren't anticipating before you began?
Doing my research, because I went into a lot of different topics, not just healthcare and medical, but the environment as well, how we treat this land of milk and honey that we so-called have. And it was my education. It was the things that I learned, the things that I had to research and had to make sure that the words on the page was true. So I had to research, okay, what is this? What exactly was this legislation for? Who voted for it? What does this medical term mean? And relate it and actually go back into the Bible and study the books of the Bible and actually learn certain things. Like, wow, I must have missed that the first 100 times, you know?
Yeah.
So it was a growing and learning experience. That's really I enjoyed it intensely, enjoyed it immensely, I should say.
Absolutely. Listen, final question here. Robert, we know about this fantastic book. We know about your past. Well, I'm focusing now on the future. Please tell me there's another book on the horizon. What's upcoming for you, man?
Yes, I'm working on the next book, which be more fiction, but the title will be Perceptions of Integrity, where I take a group of people, their lives, and it'll be up to the reader to decide, in their view, which one of these characters had integrity. And that's the short view of it. But I will dive into the person's life. You'll know everything. One person, they have all different backgrounds, socioeconomic. Some are so-called good, some are so-called bad. And it's the stories of their lives. And I just want the person to see how we define integrity. And I want the reader to realize, come to terms with how they define integrity. So that's the next book I'm working on.
In another life, Robert would have been an educator, okay? Because he is dropping gems and things that I don't care how old you are. I don't care where you are on your particular path of life. This is some knowledge that you need to pick up. This is some knowledge that will better yourself and those around you by having access to it. I generally like to close out my shows offering a reflection, going into, some insights. Honestly, it doesn't even feel right to do that in this moment. People, if you haven't already been sold, pinch yourself. You're asleep. You need to wake up. Okay, there's something happening here because I can clearly see what this book represents and what it symbolizes and how beneficial it can be for you and those around you. So I'm going to say it again. I know I don't have to because I know the majority of you are already there. I know you are already in the process of purchasing your copies as we speak. Amazon and Barnes & Noble are the way you have to go. Weeping, the Soul of a Christian Nation is the title you have to pick up, and Robert A. Little is the author you have to thank for bringing it to your table. Head on over there today, pick up your copies. This is a fantastic resource to add to your shelf, an even better gift to add to someone else's. Robert, this has been a true pleasure, man, an absolute delight. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
Thank you very much. It was wonderful, and it was wonderful because you are excellent. I was smiling to myself, wow, this guy is very good. You made it easy.